Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to read a section of the...
President Mackay, can I do the report out?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sure.
In closed session, the board discussed one item of anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.92 and gave direction to legal counsel. No further reportable action.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to go back to Section 3 and read for the public comments. At this time, any person may address the board at on any subject within the district's jurisdiction which is not on the agenda. However, any non-agenda matter will be referred to staff for report and/or action at a subsequent board meeting, and no action can be taken on any such item discussed unless the action has been authored under Section 54954.2, open parentheses, lowercase b, close parentheses, of the Government Code. Any person may also address the board in any agenda matter at the time that matter is discussed, prior to consideration and action. Speakers are requested to limit comments to 5 minutes. Does anyone have any comments that they would like to address the board at this time?
Good evening. Sue Johnson. I'm with William Fisher Memorial out there off of Bacchus. And I was just wondering if there was any update for me on the progress on presenting me with a letter that I can hand out as a disclosure regarding what the progress is on the well out there. I brought it to your attention in a letter, I believe it was about a month ago.
Sue, I dropped the ball on that. I didn't get it to you. I have a good report for you. I'll get it to you Monday. Okay,
and it's something that I can present.
Or sooner. If I can get your email, I'll email it to you.
Okay.
And I'm on the road, but I'll get it to you maybe this weekend.
Okay, yeah, it's just for any prospective buyers that, you know. My second question is, with the audits, you know, you audit the RCSD. Is William Fisher also audited as far as what the financials are?
Legal counsel and I have been discussing the legal receivership over William Fisher, and because our legal counsel is new to the district, she and I have been discussing that as of recent, because that was a question I too had. At this time, it is not audited as part of the district financial statements, but we're working on understanding the legal ramifications of the necessity of that at this time.
Okay, and also on, when we received the balance sheets, I received balance sheets on it, there's an amount on here, you know, it shows what's into the checking account, what's accounts receivable. It also says an amount that's undeposited, undeposited funds of 11,000 something, so is that just like...
It's a holding account in QuickBooks. It helps the bank reconcile every month.
Okay, so it's not actually in the bank account, or where is it? It's just in RCSD funds, or?
It is in the bank account. It's called undeposited in QuickBooks. It's just the term of the account,
okay.
But it has been deposited in the bank.
Okay, so the current amount, when I'm looking at the current assets in here, that's what is in the bank account. Okay, all right, and that's a separate bank account for William Fisher. Okay, thank you.
I'm Dr. Robert Shear. I used to serve on this board. And I read an article in the paper, and so I would like to discuss it. Our paper was that this district is charged to provide clear, clean drinking water to this community. And several things have happened since I got off the board, and we did before. But I would like to bring the board's attention to the fact is that the last meeting that I was here talking, you had a man that was going to take over the water bank. The water bank was going to be used, and he was going to send water down to San Diego. Now, I would like to give you a little history, very quick history. The RCSD was in on the first development of that water bank. We did the water bank with these young people. It was to provide water for the community. And it was to be accessible and and to do all the things that it was supposed to do. They built it, we helped build it. At the present time, our staff actually goes out and takes care of the maintenance and stuff in there. So what happened is that they forgot, and when he said they were going to send this water to San Diego, we have an ordinance in Kern County that says nothing will go south, no water will go south of the Neon Fault. We will not sell any water to anybody, and this guy is not going to take our water to San Diego. What happened is that we do not want this valley to become an LA, or because what happened is when they took the Owens Valley, they sent people up there, they bought up all the land, and then they dried up all of the creeks. And they sent the water south to LA County, down there to the city. And so we decided in Kern County, and there's an ordinance, by the way, in Kern County that says nothing. And our man over here was on the board, I think, when that happened, saying that this water will not go south. AVAC and Water District 40, AVAC has tried to keep them from doing that. AVAC, Water District 40, LA County has tried to get our water. And so I'm asking you, as board members, the new ones, to realize that this is our water. We have a water bank, which we actually helped build, and we did all this stuff before. Do not break and let the water go south of the Neon Fault. And I don't care what this guy says he's going to sell it to San Diego. We have an ordinance in Kern County that says no. And I hope that you stand up and say no.
I've got to set this straight. Any water that goes to San Diego would be water that San Diego put in the water bank. They are a partner and a shareholder in the water bank.
How did they do that, Steve?
They bought it from, just like we did. Since you were gone, that's what happened. So only water that they bank can be moved out. And the ordinance that you spoke of in Kern County is related to water mining, domestic water that's been here, and then mined to go to another area south of the county, with the exception of if a water basin extends into Kern County, then the water that is sent can only go into that basin. It can go across the county line, but only into that. So what we're looking at is the Antelope Valley Basin that we're part of. It can go into that, but it cannot go out or supplant water to go out because it was brought in.
Well, I don't know about the other thing, but all I know is that if they want to do us like they did the Owens Valley, you board members are the board. You're in charge of this. Protect our people for the water. I don't care about San Diego. I don't care about anybody else. I just care about Kern County. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Once again, here from the Rosamond Community Watch program. I want to give you guys an update on the Sierra Highway project that we had last Saturday. We had over 50 volunteers show up. We were able to clean a 1-mile stretch from Rosamond almost up to the Marie, right before the recycle plant. We had 7 dump truck loads of trash removed from the site that day, and we only got 1 mile. It was a great success. We're going to do it monthly. We're going to do it the 3rd Saturday of every month, 8 to noon. We will finish Sierra Highway, and then we will start moving on to other areas in Rosamond. So we're going to be looking for Rosamond residents to tell us where you have an area that you see trash, and it has to be a county maintained road. That's what our permits allow us. But for anywhere other than Sierra Highway, we can get a 1-day permit, and we want to not only clean up Sierra Highway, that was our initial goal, but while we have everybody hyped up We're gonna keep it going, and I wanna thank you Olaf for showing up that day. He worked his butt out. And it was a good day. We had a lot of good volunteers. We had a crew from Mortensen, and just a lot of people out there at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I thank everybody that showed up. Thanks to the RCSD for loaning us the rakes. We couldn't have gotten rid of the tumbleweeds without those. So, and we now have some community members who are donating rakes so that we won't have to continue borrowing yours. As much as we like seeing you guys, I don't want to come over here every week. But thank you all, and we are still looking for more sponsors, so we'll be able to feed our volunteers. We have enough water to last for about a year from everything that was donated, so we're good on water for now, but we will need food. And I would like to see a lot of you guys out there too. It's Rosamond. It's not just the RCWP. It's Rosamond. Let's take pride in our community, and anyone who's driven down Sierra Highway over the past few days, you have to have seen a difference. And I want to say thanks to everybody that helped, and we'll be out there again. We have a new Facebook page set up. It's Rosamond Community Cleanup. You can find it. We'll share all the information for every event, and let's all be a part of this. Thanks.
Good evening. Glennan, I'm a resident here in Rosamond. Two things. First of all, in the years, this is one thing I neglected to say here at previous board meetings I've spoken. In the years I've lived in the community, there have been times where I've called into community service district, seeing graffiti out here, or I've had some personal issues at my residence with my water meter or something like that. And just want to say, acknowledge that I've been overall very pleased with the service I've received. I called in graffiti, and the next day or two, I see it's gone, it's been taken care of. The service calls at my home over the years regarding my water meter, whatever the issue was promptly addressed. The most current call for service I got the wire on the cover over my water meter was broken, so I called that in. I think the next day I came home and this was on my front door. It was completed, so I just want to acknowledge and thank you. I've been overall pleased with service. I would give a letter grade, I would have to give it an A, so that's just my take on that. The second thing I have, there was an article in the Rosamond News. It's a February 16, 2015 edition. And Mr. President, I can read it. Yes. I know, only about 30 seconds. I don't know if everybody else might know about it, but the title, Rosamond Community Service racks up charge card late payment fees. I don't know if you gentlemen are aware of that, whatever, okay. It says, quote, in January, Rosamond Community Services District, RCSD, incurred three $39 late charges on 3 of its district charge cards with Wells Fargo Bank. On January 14, 2015, the bank listed a late charge on 3 separate cards. Total amount of late fees charged amounted to $117. Finance charges were also incurred on the 3 same charge cards. Periodic finance charges were $24.73, $17.66, and $5.61. That added up to a total of $48. Manager Stephen Perez has been undergoing closed session hearings for the last 2 months with the Community Services District directors over his job performance and management of the RCSD, unquote. So I would just like some comment, we jump on the board, or Mr. Rockabrand, Mr. Perez, however that works out, regarding these charges, and these late charges, and if that's true or not true, confirm or deny, etc. That's all I have. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to comment based on one of our bank, actually. They give us $10 or 10 days to pay these bills, these accounts. And with the significant amount of checks and balances that we go through and the way that we do payroll and things like that, occasionally we're not going to make the 10-day. It just doesn't happen. So what we need to do is we need to work with Wells Fargo to extend that. And generally, we have accounts that are in the same boat from time to time, that their processes don't work. One of them is Kern Unified School District was in the same boat. And what we did is we made the adjustment knowing that they had an extensive review on their accounts payable. In fact, they get our bill, they have to send it to Bakersfield, to the superintendent of schools for review and then for payment. It's similar to that, only their timeline to pay accounts are only 10 days.
That's a short time.
Do we have money in there as well? For that bank?
That's our bank.
Well, why are they dinging us $39 if I can get us the next
Yeah.
extra 10 days? That's crazy.
It is because I haven't got on it personally to ask that very question, but I will.
I didn't want to bring it up last meeting, but it keeps happening.
But it's a situation that is not because we're not managing our finances properly. It's because we are, and because of the numerous checks and balances that we have. We make sure everything's accountable before we ship it out.
Tell me why more business friendly bank.
I'll just add to that, that article does not mention the cash back incentive that we get that mitigates and actually earns us money on those credit cards. So we got about $150 last month of cash back incentives, which washed out at $49 about 3 times.
All right, thank you.
I want to move to item 6, comments and presentations. Number 1 is director's comments.
I attended the last Chamber of Commerce meeting, and they're still in the process of trying to find the bank for Rosamond. Chamber of Commerce is working on that. The Diamond Street project, they were surveying it, and they expect to start the construction work on March 30th, and they hope that it will be finished before the September Fest. And the Renews Biz grants will be announced, who gets them, on February the 28th. And I'd like to speak to what's happening with Grace Resource in their possible new home, but I'll give my 2 or 3 minutes to Steve Baker to tell us about that.
Thank you. Good to be here. See you all. As you know, Grace Resources is in the old Toyota building on Sierra Highway. We've been there 14 years. We were on Decker for 10 years before that. So tomorrow is my 24th anniversary of being Grace. We have been given the opportunity to take over the county hospital at 60th Weston Avenue line, that whole property. And that means we'll move the shelter and the food services and our veteran services, our parenting classes, and our power classes and all of our computer training classes out to that facility. So it's kind of scary, it's very exciting. Right now my capacity with the men's shelter at the fairgrounds is about 150, and we'll be able to do 300 people at the hospital building. So I can't tell you the rest of it because it's top secret and I'll have to shoot you. But it's, one of my concerns was the electric bill for $110,000 hospital building, but it looks like it's going to be taken care of for us. So there's a lot of good things going on. We serve hundreds of families in the Rosamond area that come down and see us for our classes and doing our community service time for the courts and getting groceries. We do that 5 times a week. And we serve dinners. We have lots of people who take a ride down there with a car and have dinner on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So I'm really happy to report that. I hope maybe down the road I give you more details. And it was very exciting. So once in a lifetime opportunity to get a facility like that. So, and we're surrounded by prisons, so we're safe. Thanks, Byron.
Anyone else? Yeah, I have a couple items I would like to bring out. I formed an ad hoc committee. An ad hoc committee is 2 members of the board. And I brought it to you a couple of meetings ago, and I said that all committees were going to be all board members. The general manager, our finance person, and our council told me that I could form an ad hoc committee. And what it was is this ad hoc committee is, we're looking for a new firm to do the audits for 2015, 16, and 17. And there was a number of proposals that we got in from a lot of agencies that want to be our new auditors. And they all had to be read, they had to be graded, and I was informed that the best way to do that would be to form the ad hoc committee And so I formed an ad hoc committee of myself and my vice president, Mr. Wallis, to do the reading and scoring, and we're going to make a presentation later on that, the outcome of that. The other thing that I would like to ask is the hotel expenses for directors when we go to conferences. Could we have them put alongside any reimbursement so that the people can see what the total cost of the conference was? You know, the cost of the conference, the cost of the hotels, and any travel or anything like that, and the other expenses for meals, all put in one place so everybody can see what the total cost of a conference is.
So they also get paid so much a day too, right?
Yes.
That could be put on a separate sheet and included in the, on the AP list when we submit it.
Okay. Let's go to item 7, informational items. Number 1, general manager, update of district projects, and he's also going to talk about update of assessment districts 81 or 88-1, 90-2, and 91-3, and board members reimbursement and meeting attendance.
Forgive us for the screen being crooked. We had some maintenance done on that. Obviously, we didn't check it before we turned it on for how square it was. What I'd like to do is I'd like to cover the recent tour that we had for the community of our facilities. And Gail Warnick was kind enough to take photographs on the while we were on the tour, and this is just a slide presentation of our facilities and our moving around. This is a briefing before we went out. First stop was in the back of this facility to discuss the solar array that's here. These are tilting units, not stationary, that will track the sun in the morning until the evening and give us optimum coverage and production. Myself and Supervisor Scribner discussing the solar array. Your Superintendent, Assistant General Manager John Houghton and his GIS office and his SCADA system, where they can operate a lot of our tank system and systems in the district from this office, and we're discussing that. Brock Smith, our engineering tech, he takes care of all of the applications that come in for water and sewer connection, and any development issues. He ensures that the developers are up to speed and do things per our specs. This is what is affectionately known as Sweet Sue. It's our vacuum truck, and it has saved our guys a tremendous amount of time in the field in making repairs and the like. They can take water out of a hole in a ditch in no time flat and get in there and make a repair. Water storage tank 3, that's the one up on 30th Street, up on the top of the hill. At the time we were here, we were cleaning this tank. Each tank is in rotation once every 5 years. It gets cleaned out, it's inspected for any holes, anything in the coatings. It's washed down, it's cleaned up before we put water back in it. No water was lost in that. It was actually just moved to other tanks and throughout the system. There's a motor control center for, I believe, that water tank 3. Some of the valves and piping. Mike Gillardone and Paul Warnick, I believe, were at the wastewater treatment plant. Michael is the lead operator at the water plant. This is where the headworks come in from the community. This is the first stage. It removes most of all the papers and different things in the waste stream. The motor control center for the lift station at the treatment plant, it takes it from there and moves it up to the grit removal position here, and that's one more step in removing impurities and things from the waste stream. From this point, it moves into what's known as a biolac system. It's a system of aerated zones. If you notice, some of these are agitated, and further down the line, every other one is supposed to be agitated and then not agitated. What that does to the bacterial eating bugs that decompose the biosolids in there, it starves them, then feeds them, and causes them to really react when they get the oxygen, and it generates a faster cycle. As it moves through that cycle to the far end of that the biolac system, it moves into the clarifier. And in the clarifier, this is where you start seeing clearer water. There's a curb inside there. You can see around the left edge here, it's kind of a blue color. Well, there's a curb there. The water level is probably about a quarter inch above that curb. As everything settles out, the clear water without impurities in it, there's still some, falls over that edge, and from that it goes through our filters, our sand filters. We have three major sand filters from that point. This is a system of pumps and valves and piping to send it in various different directions depending on where we want it to go. This is a sand filter bay where it goes through here, and off to the upper left corner you'll see those structures, those little square structures up there. That's the ultraviolet light. The water passes from the filters here through that area down the way, and as it does, it passes under ultraviolet light, which kills a lot of your pathogens and everything else. In fact, it kills all of them. The sludge that is generated in the process is because of the way the bacteria eats the biosolid. It's minimal, and it's deposited into these drying beds, and after so often we'll go out and clean those out, but it's set there, left to air dry. Smell that many people would associate with a sewer plant is almost non-existent. There is some, but it's nothing like what you would think. So if it's maintained properly. This slide is the ultraviolet lights and that channel below them is where the water's flowing. It's a disinfectant system. Probably one of the best that we have. It's extremely expensive, an extremely expensive system, but in the types of water that are produced in sewage reclamation, you have secondary sewage, and it can go out to our ponds and where it sits and evaporates, and then you have a tertiary, and that's the type of water that is cleaned and cleared of pathogens. In some areas, the tertiary water with disinfection is drinkable. This is at that stage, but not approved to be drained because they just don't see it in this region as being a viable alternative. But one day, when we're running out of water, everybody will be taking a different note. All water, for all intents and purposes, is recycled, because there's no more nor less water on this earth than there was millions and millions of years ago. So it's one time or another is going to be recycled. Another motor control center for the pump station. This is an area where a lot of our chemicals for that treatment plant are kept. Part of the clarifier, if we need to assist the things that are suspended in the water to drop out, we put chemical in the water that causes those things to come together. And as they come together, they get heavier and they drop out faster. And we can control and assist that depending on what the operators need to do. This is solar array at the treatment plant. It is north of the facility that we just saw. There's a large area out there also that is leveled and ready to take on a larger, up to a 1 megawatt solar to take on the wastewater treatment plant. The solar that we have out there now takes care of the ponds, but we're preparing and trying to get all the information to get a good power purchase agreement to put an additional 1 megawatt to take care of the additional load. That way it'll drive down our electric cost tremendously. This is the Willow Springs Water Bank. There's not a lot to see here. Off in the distance in about the middle right, you'll see a concrete stanchion with what appears to be some holes in it. When the water's put in the water bank, it comes up through those, and it's like a bubbler, and it just flows out instead of eroding, and fills our the various cells within the water bank. This is an extraction well site. We'll put a well in there. We're going to put in 2 this year, 2 extraction wells, but we have 6 total. This is the bubbler again. There's a 54-inch line that we bring water into the water bank on, and it's distributed around in various areas around the water bank in a 30, then it drops down to an 18, and it's distributed in the water bank in that manner. This may look dry, and it is, but it sure looks nice when there's water in it. Because of the drought, we're not putting as much water in it. The way we got water in it last year, when no one else could get water, is I purchased water that was already in the bank to put in our inventory. And when I purchased it at recoverable water rather than a leave behind at 10%. And so we did pretty good at getting 1,000 acre-feet additional into our water bank in that manner. John telling everybody how it really works, and the gentleman in the red is who Dr. Scheer had mentioned was discussing the San Diego water. But rest assured, no one can take water out of the bank unless they have put it in there, bought it, put it in there, are paying the fees for it, and they have to leave 10% behind. So basically, as a partner in the water bank and as a user of the water bank, they're actually replenishing our aquifer by 10% of everything they place in the bank. And my hat's off to Gail and Paul for their community work and service, the cleanup, for taking the pictures and bringing them to us so we could enjoy them. Thank you very much. I'd like to now turn your attention to the board to the staff report that I've prepared, and basically the request was made to give an update on the assessment districts in the area. And basically what I did is I put an explanation in in your packets to explain this. It's about a 3-page document. There's not a lot of reading, but there's a lot of good information. The typical judicial foreclosure process first involves mailing a pre-foreclosure letter to the property owner. The letter demands payment for the delinquent assessment, interest, penalties, administrative costs, legal fees, and costs. If no response is received in 30 days, a complaint and judicial foreclosure is filed with the court and served on the property owner. Default is entered into if the property owner doesn't reply within 30 days. And a request for judgment with an order to sell the property is subsequently filed with the court. If the owner answers the complaint, a motion for summary judgment is filed instead. After the judgment is entered, a writ of sale is filed with the court. The issued writ is then sent to the sheriff's office, which sells the property. Delinquencies paid in full. In Assessment District 1990-2, 31 are paid in full. In Assessment District 1991-3, 48 are paid in full. And we picked up some...
Delinquencies are paid in full, or the whole thing's been paid off?
The delinquencies are paid in full, matters paid in full.
So they're still paying regular property taxes every 6 months?
Yeah, I assume.
Okay.
That's not my issue on the recovery here, but I assume they are. Assessment District 1999-4, how 99-4 got into this mix is, it must have been somebody got a letter for an overlap or something, and we picked up a 99-4.
That's a fit subdivision, there's fewer properties.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there we had 3 of those paid in full.
That means if there was a lien, and you sold the house or something, that they paid off, right? Because you have other ones that would be on the property. I guess-
No, you're getting a little bit technical on how it's done. This is simply delinquencies are paid in full. That's all I'm giving you. I'm not, I can't go into whether or not it's an encumbrance of any kind in a sale or anything else. But as far as we're concerned, regarding the bonds, the delinquencies are all paid in full.
If there were delinquent taxes remaining on the property, which is not the case for these particular properties identified, it would be a lien on the property.
Right. AD Assessment District 1991-3, we have 68 additional judgments entered. And I won't even cover 1999-4 because it doesn't have any other activity. Motions to amend or modify a judgment. In Assessment District 1990-2, we have 38. Assessment District 1991-3, we have 68. And complaint file.
Quick question.
Sure.
It appears that we have more motions to amend than we have judgments entered in 1990-2, or is it, that's just the judgment you've entered recently?
Yes, that's correct.
So recently,
Yeah,
27.
these are, some of them have been entered recently, and then some are being modified, but they're not totally finished, so they're either in the process.
Is that the first time we got judgments in 1991-3 then? Because it's the same number, but being modified. And we're the ones modifying because someone was making a payment, is that right?
Pardon?
It says here that if someone partially satisfies the judgment, then we modify the judgment. What's our responsibility to do that?
Another situation in which there might be a modification is if it's taken long enough for a subsequent delinquency has accrued on the property, you amend the judgment to add the new delinquency and the associated penalties and interest. So I suspect that may be what's going on here, and there may be motions to amend or modify the complaint rather than a judgment to show the discrepancy between the motions to amend and number of judgments entered. That might be what you have going on as well.
That's correct. It has been a difficult task to, number one, to round all the property owners up. It's like herding cats, number one. Number two, not everybody wants to answer this, and I don't blame them.
How many total properties are there in 1991-3 and 1990-2?
I have no idea. I do, I have, but I didn't put it on the report.
They're significantly more than 99-4.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Defaults entered. There's no cases of default. Complaints filed, there was one for 1990-2 and one for 1991-3. It was an overlap on that property, and basically we're awaiting a court decision on a demur that the district filed.
It says the
Right,
property,
district
it says the property owner filed a complaint. Why would he do that? Because of an overlap?
The property owner filed a complaint.
Right,
The district filed a demur.
I understand that.
Right.
So most of the time, we would be the one filing the complaint, right?
You have to understand why the complaint was done, and I don't believe I can go into
I'll let you
the
talk to
legal
counsel about
issue.
that. That makes more sense.
But it was out of the ordinary.
Sounds like.
That's why the demur was filed. I don't believe he even had standing. So pre-foreclosure letters going out currently is 12 in 1990-2, 1991-3, there's 8. Payment plans, occasionally we'll get with the property owner. They want to keep the property, they want to take care of the delinquency, and we'll honor that with a payment plan. And they have to sign a stipulation that we can file an immediate judgment should they default on that. But those are minimal. Assembly or Assessment District 1990-2, there's 2 of those. Payment plans in Assessment District 91-3, there are 9.
Is that an increase over time? Because in 1991-3, a lot of those parcels are what, 160, 640 acres?
Well, there's a lot of big parcels, but there are small parcels in 91-3 also.
Okay.
In some cases, there are residential homes on a few, very few.
There's different considerations given the residences of.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Miscellaneous, these cases are issued and they need to be resolved and don't fit into any one of the upper categories. And we have 2 in Assessment District 1990-2, 37 in Assessment District 1991-3. They have various issues that would be too lengthy to go into to explain, but suffice it to say they're being reviewed and corrected for foreclosure letters and notice and protocol. Assessment District 1988-1, it matured and left the RCSD as the trustee approximately $422,000 to use for the purposes of the original assessment. So this is an assessment district that actually is not in default. And I've got to say that overall 1990-2, although the numbers here are not as significant as 91-3 and right now because they're not that far. And luckily, as we're doing 1991-3, overlapping Assessment District 90-2, the trustee agreed to pay as if we process those also.
Who's the trustee?
Union Bank is one and US Bank is the other.
Okay, that's the person mining the bond.
Right, the trustee. And they've agreed to pay those expenses. So the way it works is we incur expense in doing this. We submit that expense to the trustees, and the trustees pay that from the bond trustee administration.
So all the fees we're paying to the attorneys to do the collections, we get that back to the trustee itself?
Yes, it comes from the proceeds.
Getting back to 1990-2, my understanding was years ago that about 20% of the properties were in a position where they wouldn't be able to pay when the recession hit, and 80% were paying. Is that pretty much what it
That's
is?
pretty close to what we're seeing right now.
Okay, and 1991-3 was the reverse, 20% could pay, 80% could not. Is that
That's
still the
a
same?
good assessment. I don't know if that's exactly accurate, but it's a good illustration.
And then the last question I have is, it says, left us 420 to use for purposes of the original assessment. Doesn't mean we can use that to repair lines or upgrade the system as it went out all the way up to the Thunder River Mobile Home Park, or the water lines, or the sewer lines.
Depending on where 88-1 is, and to map 88-1, to take a look at that map, any work that we do in there to maintain it, to fix it, to expand it, can be used. That's my understanding.
We just got the money in the
Yep.
last 5 years.
Well, we've tracked that, but internally, I think what you were getting at, do we track our time so we can bill it appropriately?
Right.
Yes. And that's extremely important and good question. Some of the assessment district time wasn't billed per se, it's accounted for as to where and what we worked on. In some cases, it wasn't being applied to an assessment district for payment. And we've had to turn that around, and that was part of our trying to capture every dime that we're supposed to and do it properly.
It's got like a limit of trustee, he wasn't going to pursue it, so we needed to.
And one of the most important things about the entire workout, the RCSD was never on the hook for any of these bonds. We didn't owe a dime. We owed nothing to the bondholders. But again, the reason we're taking on this exercise is to save the district in future
If anybody wants to bond again,
financing.
if anybody wants to bond again, they want to say what happened to do last one.
Correct.
Failure to foreclose would be a breach of your bond covenant, and it would dramatically impact your credit rating
Right.
for future issuances.
So we're doing extremely good on recovery. We were hopeful to get all of the bondholders at least their principal amount back, and it's moving on fairly well, but we're on a time crunch. 1990-2 doesn't mature until 16. 91-3, we're on a time crunch right now to get that complete.
When does it mature?
It's already matured. We're 2 years.
Over. I guess what I'd heard, maybe 5, 6, back in 2006, I guess, when we were talking about turning things around again. Before that time, in the 90s, people were offering 30% on the dollars to people who owned bonds,
That's what I heard.
and the guy was buying them out. Does that change anything in the 1991-3 evaluation, or? Just
Not at
basically-
all. I think he didn't do anything.
Okay. And ultimately, what happens if we don't get this, what is our role, I guess, in resolving the time crunch? Are we the ones under pressure, or who's under pressure?
Yes, we're actually, to do this, we're under a time crunch. There's a 2-year statute, and I believe it matured in 13, September of 13. So,
To file the action?
yes. Is it 4? Maybe it is 4. I was getting all excited with 2. For some reason, I'm thinking 2, and, but we do have a time crunch to get it all cleaned up. However, having said that, I think at this juncture, because it's so far in the hole, or was, that the trustees would probably allow us time extension. We would have to ask if we got to that. But it looks like what we're doing right now, we're going to make the 4 years easy.
The 4 years is the statute of limitations to pursue a foreclosure action, and the trustee wouldn't be able to extend that, but it sounds like we're on a path where we're gonna hit that. We're gonna get that done.
That's all I have.
Okay, item C,
C, what's C?
board member reimbursement and meeting attendance.
That's not mine, that should be an action item. Oh. I was reminded what I'm supposed to remind you. Board member reimbursements and meeting attendances. Just keep in mind, reimbursements, you have 30 days to get those in. So try to get those in as soon as possible when you get back from a conference or something, so we can get those paid out and reimbursed properly. And meeting attendance, if for some reason you're not going to make it, you're all big boys, nobody's making you do anything you don't want to do or can't do, and that happens. Just let us know, because what we can do is we can get credits or reimbursement at the function if it's not too late. So they have some deadlines, and if we can find out that you can't make it for some reason, if we're there, or we can call and say, hey, we can't make it, can we get a reimbursement? Boom. Director Webb in the past had been called out to court many times, and each time he would tell us, I can't make it, I'm in court. And we'd get reimbursements for that. So just let us know, and it helps us in the bookkeeping and everything else.
We need to install the master meters. Completed the monthly meter reading, and since our last meeting we've only had 3 service line leaks, Hillcrest, Monte Vista, and Summer Breeze. And the guy's been doing some work out there at the water bank on some of the infrastructure. There was a couple of filters out there that used to belong to AVAC it was a filter for aqueduct water before it went into the agricultural sprinklers and stuff. We took those filters out and replaced them with just hard plumbing, so there's no more filters there. We're not worried about any of the debris as far as the small stuff that comes through AVAC's line for the water bank. And Public Works completed so far this month 142 work orders. And that's all I have.
In front of you, you'll have a copy of the second quarter financial update, and based on the insistence of several community members, we've decided to put it up so that you can all see it every time. We think that's a great idea. Can you shrink that down a little bit, Lizette? There's a little bit more on the screen at one time. So every quarter the board has asked that the finance department put together a report on the doings of the district. What I've done is comprise a report that ends December 31st, for the 6-month period ended December 31st, 2014. The first page is a district overview, and then the subsequent pages have a report on water, sewer, street lighting, and park activities. I'll remind you that the figures here are unaudited. The revenue actuals have been adjusted for the semi-annual collections of taxes, charges for service, or assessment fees, which were earned in December but collected in January. Similarly, expenditure actuals have been adjusted for one-time yearly or semi-periodic expenditures to smooth the presentation of data and more accurately reflect the incurrence of expenditures over the relevant use period. So as a district, in total, we reported a net revenue of $593,394 for the first half of the year, which is in line with our budget expectations. Unlike the first quarter, however, the end of the second quarter presents a much clearer picture of what's going on with the district because of the timing of cash receipts versus the expenditures. Typically in the first quarter, more expenditures are incurred versus the revenues because of the government's way of collecting property taxes and charges in that manner. As you'll see in the following pages, the district has managed the cost of the operations in strict conformity with the budgets. So as you see here, the water fund revenues are at 50% of the annual. Charges for services are in line with expectations, while the connection and installation charges lag at 11% due to less than anticipated development. The interest in miscellaneous income is at 170% due to the unanticipated transfer from the legacy development deposit balance. They have a balance on hand with us, and when we go out there and we do work, then we take it out of the liability and we report it as a revenue. The interest income is higher than expected due to a more strategic employment of the district investment portfolio. As some background, governments typically invest in what's called LAIF. It's the Local Agency Investment Fund. At this time, it's paying a very, very, very low interest rate. So Steve and I met with a investment advisor a couple of months ago and decided that it would be more strategic to move our money to CalTrust. Since then, we have realized almost 100% turnover in terms of interest earnings. For example, what I mean by that is if we were earning $100 with LAIF, we're now earning $200 with CalTrust. It's much more strategic use of that money. So our interest in income has been significantly higher than it was. Water fund expenses fell 6% below expectations, while salaries, wages, and repairs are higher than anticipated. Operating expenses such as utilities, business expenses, general administrative, office supplies, and interest expense are considerably under budget projections, leaving the fund in a surplus position of $272,000. Mr. Olaf, did you have a question?
No, you're actually your answer. If you could just hit the. We're at the midpoint of the year, so if anything's over 50%, that means we're spending more than we thought. If anything's less than 50%, we're spending less. We thought if you could just comment as you go through, as you have been doing.
Certainly, that's great. That's a great point. As he's saying here, so these are the water fund revenues by object. So we break them down into these categories for comparability purposes. So here we budgeted to bring in $983,000 for the whole year. We've brought in $373,000. That represents a 38% of the budget for the revenue. So this is over budget. This is under budget. This is over budget. But the fund as a whole is at 50%. Conversely, expenditures here were over in salaries and wages, under in holidays, so on and so forth, but the fund as a whole is 44%, so 6% less than anticipated as a total. Okay? Moving on to the sewer fund. Fund revenues are at 46%. Having been adjusted for the change in base fee collection procedures, that's the sewer base fee being put on the property tax bill. We don't get the December revenues until January, so I've made an accounting entry to adjust for that so that it reflects the timing of those revenues and cash collections.
So it does reflect? Or?
It does reflect those accruals, yes.
Okay.
Permits and fees came in at 30%, connection charges came in at 9% due to lower than anticipated development. Again, the interest and miscellaneous income are reported higher than anticipated. The sewer fund expenses are in line with expectations for these 2 quarters. Depreciation has been reanalyzed since the first quarter report. This was due to the large asset additions for the wastewater treatment plant, which were employed subsequent to the budget preparation. So it was reported at 187% of budget. I will take this time to remind the crowd that depreciation is a non-cash expense. Nothing actually was paid for depreciation. It's an accounting entry only to account for the use of the infrastructure that's already in place. This is a new line item for the 14-15 budget. This isn't something that we've dealt with before, and we have gone back and reanalyzed it so that when we go back into the 15-16 budget process, we will then anticipate a higher amount of depreciation because we capitalized the wastewater treatment plant.
There's 3 of us that are new here. When did it actually come online, the wastewater treatment plant? When was it officially?
We were actually operating it in late 11, and it came online. It's been operating for quite some time, but in 12 we were operating and going through our 1-year operation certification with the state. Then the bioassay came after that to certify the quality of the water that was in the output for the tertiary side. So that was in 14, no, that was that was in June of 13. So we've been probably running ever since then in a capacity of running, if you will.
And just now we're putting on the books for the 14-15 year because
When I first came in, I did a pretty detailed analysis of capital assets and construction in progress. And through interviews with Steve and John and other district staff, it came to my attention that the costs of the wastewater treatment plant were sitting on the balance sheet unamortized. Let's see.
and is that protecting the bottom line of 55% as well then?
That's total, yes, exactly.
So it's skewing it upward.
It is, and if you read right below in the expenditure line there, Had we come in at budget for depreciation, the sewer fund would have been 45% total expenditures. So it would have been 5% under budget. So even though this number here looks really scary, as a fund, it's really performing in line with expectations. So the street lighting funds in the first quarter report, I grouped them together. In this report, I've separated them. So this page you're looking at here is for both funds 3 and 4. That's the street lighting fund, the arterial lighting fund, and the LL82 fund. The subsequent 2 pages after that break the funds down into their component units. In May of 2014, the community took to the polls to vote on whether or not their zone would be willing to shoulder the cost for street lighting and be annexed into LL82. Therefore, the second quarter financial status report, the street light analysis has been broken up for the purposes of highlighting the differences in fund activity. As a whole, the 2 funds have generated a surplus of $7,326 for the period ended December 31st, 2014. The Streetlight Fund has sustained a loss of $3,692, while the LL82 Fund has generated a surplus of $11,018. Total revenues are 9% higher than anticipated, while expenditures are 15% lower than anticipated, as represented in these figures here. We have 59% total revenues over what would be halfway through the year, and we're 15% under where we expected to be between those 2 funds. On the next page is a breakout of the Streetlight Fund, otherwise known as Fund 3. Predicting consumer behavior is likely the most difficult hurdle that managers everywhere have to address in the budget process. While governments are different in many ways, financial and managerial personnel are still tasked with determining how much their community members are willing to pay for services. Fund 3, originally set up to collect and administer arterial lighting services for the community as a whole, has been running in a deficit for over 5 years. Through comprehensive and thorough cost analysis, management has taken proactive steps to stop the overspending and identified that without commensurate revenue matching, the funds would never recover from years of overspending. Costs absorbed by Fund 3 have been moved to Fund 4, where they are being matched against the revenue sources for the zones that voted them in. For Fund 3, this means it will generate a loss that, when annualized, will represent less than 7% of the original budget deficit. In other words, Fund 3 had budgeted to lose $107,000 and is trending to lose $7,300, a savings of $100,285. So basically what that means, we've got 54% of our charges for services having come in, 49%. We look good here, we look great here, because we're managing these costs very effectively. We were budgeted to take this number minus this number, and that will give you your loss in that fund. Right now, we've got that number minus that number, which is significantly less than what we anticipated, because we've been managing the costs and comparing the revenues that are coming in through the tax rolls since July 1st against the costs of operating those streetlights.
They're still all on, right?
Yes, sir.
And we're paying for the ones that didn't vote it in, right?
Yes, sir.
So those who voted in streetlights
Are
are
paying for that.
subsidizing those who voted no streetlights.
Yes, sir.
The funds that voted in, my understanding is that they show a surplus over time, that the amount that goes on their taxes comes down. Is that what we formula?
Yep. Each zone will be evaluated for that.
Okay.
Moving on to Fund 4, then. Scroll down, please. The LL82, otherwise known as the Lighting and Landscape Assessment District Zone 2, was set up in 2006 to collect revenues and administer street lighting to new development in the Rosamond community. For the last 5 years, this fund has been running in a deficit along with the street lighting fund due to a short in the revenue when compared to the cost. As a result of the May 2014 vote, community members agreed to bear a more appropriate amount of the cost for these lights, and as a result, this fund has generated a surplus for the period ending December 31st, 2014 in the amount of $11,018. Through proper identification of cost responsibility and a tightly regulated budget, this management team has begun the grueling task of digging itself out from under a significant fund balance deficit. What you see here is that we're at 74% of expected revenues in this fund. When we put together the budget originally, we did not know that this vote was going to be put together and that we were going to get this bump in revenues. So this is a good thing. But
Is part of that because people paid all their property taxes at one time, or?
no. Kern County is unique in that capacity, Mr. Olaf, because they pay property taxes monthly, whereas most others remit property taxes semi-annually. So this has been adjusted for the December accrual, but had it not been in there, it would have been a nominal difference anyway. What's important to notice is the management of cost here. This number here, the 7190, really should be closer to $20,000, half of this number. It's this number. And it's due to the people in this room having conversations about how to administer those costs, having hard conversations with SCE, and finding out where those costs really truly belong, that over time have really reflected the balances of this fund. Moving on to parks. As a whole, the park funds are performing as expected. Total revenues are at 48% of budget, expenditures 42% of budget. The significant revenue sources such as property tax, the CSAs, and rent are all within or above expectations. All but 3 of the expenditure categories came in under budget. There's no surprises here. We're right where we should be. Yes?
Our biggest expense starts June 1st with the pool, is that right?
Right, and that's something I have to bring back to this board. Will be probably on the next agenda. Discuss it with you to decide whether or not we're going to open the pool or not. Because we have to start hiring, recruiting right away.
Next page is fund balance. Fund balance is a term used by accountants to discuss a fund's earnings or losses over several fiscal years, synonymous with retained earnings in the private sector. It's not to be confused with the amount of cash any particular fund may have or used in a given period of time. Fund balances after second quarter are at or above expectations. As seen in the graph below, and as described in the previous pages, the street lighting funds in aggregate have generated a surplus for the 6 month ended December 31st. Park funds are continuing to lose money. However, the losses incurred to date are significantly lower than expected. And I'll stop here to explain what that means. So this second quarter fund balance chart, the water, sorry, you can't really see the numbers, but this number is $24,220,000. Okay? 1 minute. The water fund at the end of the projected annual, pursuant to the budget, is $23 million. So when we went through the entire budget process, we were anticipating our fund balance to increase up to $23 million. At the end of quarter 2, it's already above that because of the management of the costs and the revenue collection. Okay? The same thing goes for sewer. We expected it to be here at the end of the year. It's here now, so we're only short about $800,000. Parks, street lighting, the same model applies to the way fund balance works. And what fund balance does is it tells you over a period of time, usually from inception, how an activity of a government is performing. If you have a positive fund balance, that means that you've had more revenues than you've had expenses over the period being measured. If you have a deficit balance, like the parks and the street lighting, it means that you've been spending more money than you've actually gotten the money for. Yes, sir.
The water and sewer, that's primarily not cash, that's our fixed assets, including the water treatment plant?
That's correct.
Okay. And the pipes in the ground and the meters?
Fund balance is made up of, fund balance is assets minus liabilities.
Okay.
So okay, it's all assets, receivables, cash, infrastructure, net of depreciation, all of it, minus current liabilities, non-current liabilities, long-term debt, everything, and leaves you with fund balance.
So we really don't have any assets in parks that you depreciate or in street lighting that we depreciate?
Not in street lighting. We do have some infrastructure at the parks, but it's nominal.
Okay.
As seen here, fund balances for water and sewer remain rather steady or above expected levels. Street lights and parks continue to incur more expenditures than revenues, but have been favorably controlled over the first half of the fiscal year. As a reminder, annual fund balances are projected to decrease by $3,461 in the water, increase $1.2 million in the sewer fund, decrease $48,000 in the street lighting fund, and $212,000 in the park funds. However, if the trends from the first half of the year continue, the district fund balances stand to realize significant overachievement when compared to budget expectations. And finally, the one that everybody cares about, cash. The cash sources and uses of each fund show on a real-time basis how the fund is performing in a given period of time. For the 2 quarters ended December 31st, the district paid out $266,000 more than it took in. And it gives you a breakdown of what that did. What's interesting to note is the street lighting funds, again this is funds 3 and 4, brought in excess cash, which is a really good sign. It means that we have the money to pay the bills in those funds. No surprise, Park is bringing in less money than it paid out. Sewer fund brought in more money than it spent. And the water fund had a significant payable at the end of the first period. So the cash that went out in second period was really an expense of the first period. So the outflows here aren't really representative. This is just simply in a static period of time from October 1st to, or excuse me, from July 1st to December 31st. This is what came in, this is what went out.
And what was the big expenditure?
We have a big debt payment that we accrue on June 30th for the water control, I believe it is.
Are we paying on June 30th or pay it?
We accrue it, but the cash actually goes out. So it's an expense of the prior year, but the money actually goes out after the end of the fiscal year.
Rockabrand, you want to bring up that subject that we talked about?
Be happy to. It's kind of a short order point now. I read the promissory note. As a point of background, we discussed in a policy meeting the park loans that are due, one of which is due in June of this year. And what we discovered was that we needed to find a way of paying back that loan. Obviously, we want to pay back these loans, but this one's due in June. Through subsequent follow-up, the promissory note, it allows us, and I'll read it to you if you bear with me. If the maker shall fail, the maker being the parks, shall fail to pay when due any payment of principal or interest on this note, and such failure continues for 15 days after payee notifies maker thereof in writing. However, if available revenues are not sufficient to pay the annual payment, any unpaid balance, principal or interest under this promissory note may be carried forward to the succeeding year without default. I have spoken with counsel, and she and I agree that the succeeding year would push it forward one fiscal year to June 30th or June 9th pursuant to the promissory note of 2016.
Would you do that in perpetuity or just to this 2016?
I think reading it as in perpetuity would read the promissory note as a nullity, so I think that would be inappropriate, but it does give an extra year. Thank you for a productive workshop today. I hope you found it useful. Other than that, I have no updates.
Move to item 8, discussion on action items. Discussion regarding county service areas 63.4, 63.5, and 63.6.
You know, I got the exact figures in that I wanted to present to you. However, what we did find is in 63-5, the park, pool, Williford Park. In our investigation of events that gave us or brought us to that park, we found that the county of Kern in '07 had did a quick claim deed to us of that park. And then we searched the record to make sure that that was filed and it occurred. I went back and reviewed the minutes of that board meeting, and it in fact was approved by the Board of Supervisors and was filed with the County of Kern. the Hall of Records, and we have requested that quitclaim deed. So that brings us to the issue of the park now in our discussion, and I would ask if the board allow me some more time to bring back some numbers again at the next meeting. But I wanted to give that tidbit to the board.
Which means we own it.
We own the park.
Okay.
However,
But why do we have an agreement that's dated after that?
well, that is a county service area, that's money. So apparently, and I'm only guessing, I have to go back and look at the minutes, that the board agreed, or the county of Kern agreed to give the CSD the proceeds from the CSA that was paying for that, so we could operate it. So it was basically an operating agreement. Although they had quitclaim deeded that to us, it may have been an action that had to occur before they could do a CSA pass-through. But I'm not sure.
Okay. Council could look at that as well, maybe? There's a way to
I'll
get,
work with the general manager, so we're not duplicating efforts.
and the other thing to look at too would be, that was initially set up for 1,000 homes, as you may remember. They stopped at 495 because they didn't want to pay for the West Park School. And they finally built it out, but now we finally have some other homes in the area. It doesn't qualify as a general area park, but it is a neighborhood park. If we can get some of the other places that are not in the CSA, into the CSA, some of the stuff over on the other side of 30th Street.
That's a good
between
point.
35th and 30th, maybe that would help. You could have the same assessment amount, but you'd have more properties contributing, that might help too.
In the initial CSA, the people in the West Park, per se, are paying in the neighborhood of $100 each. A year.
137 is what I heard last meeting.
How much?
137,
Yeah.
one of the residents said, is that right?
And it may have been, for the sake of discussion, around $100.
Okay.
And then the other group in the zone of benefit was also charged for that, but they were charged at a lesser amount, at about in the neighborhood of $75.
Okay.
So as you're aware, zones of benefit can be charged less based on frequency of use, etc. So there's two areas that are being charged for that. The secondary area, the lesser of the two amounts, isn't real clear exactly where that area lies, and it might be the area you're speaking of on the other side up to 30th Street. And I'm thinking it is because that's the only thing around there that wasn't there when West Park was assessed. The other part was the other half of all that assessment. If you recall, south of the school, all that area was a track map.
Right.
Kaufman Road was paying that other half. And when they reverted that back to a parcel map, they wanted to dump that additional 50% cost onto the backs of West Park payers. And as a county supervisor, I told them no. Not as long as I was a supervisor were they going to do it. We got in a big argument about that, and they ended up paying it for an additional 5 years. And then when I left office, it, for some reason, was reverted out, and I don't know what happened. That other revenue is not coming in for that, to my knowledge.
We need to explore that, plus whether the county might have interest in helping out, we'll see.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to tables to March the 11th.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
5-0. Brings us to item 9, consent A is approved Director Morrison McKay's expense report dated January 29th, 2015, and approved check/voucher register dated February the 3rd, 2015 to February the 16th, 2015.
Did you want to let Director Wallis take care of Langley? Preside?
Okay.
Yes, about 2 weeks then, tell us how we leave it.
I'm leaving because the deal on this item is about me.
I have a question in regard to that. Does he really need to recuse himself for reimbursement like that?
It's under the policy, no, he doesn't need to, but it is not inappropriate for him to recuse.
Now when you come back,
You can go ahead.
do I have a motion to pay that?
I'll move we pay line A.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I can go with that.
Ed.
They denied it.
One other comment that I would make on this expense report, Director Shingledecker and I traveled together,
Save some money.
he didn't charge the district for the travel. So we only had one travel expense.
Thank you.
Did you take care of item B too?
No, no.
Okay, all right. We'll move to accept item B.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
Moved and second, any further discussion?
Yes, how much was it? We never heard what your expenditures were.
It's on the public
It's on the,
website.
sheet.
It's $450.80.
It's not on here.
It's on the
There's
website.
a separate page for it?
It's on the website
Yes.
too.
Okay, thank you. We don't have it.
Okay.
In the future, if you have a question, all of the documents that we have are in a binder right over here. Also, you can review that before or during the meeting.
You're also on the website.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because we didn't know that, and it wasn't on our agenda.
But it's all on the website, right?
Yes.
You can see every bit of it on there, every expense of it.
Well, I knew I was coming to the meeting, so.
So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
5-0. Takes us to item 10, outstanding items. Number 1, written communications. Do you have any written communications? Okay. Item 2, request for future agenda items.
Mr. President, I saw in the newspaper on Monday, Valley Press, an article about the city of Lancaster has a power company now.
Yes.
And there's a number of things I liked about that. Number 1 was they're gonna charge 3% less than Southern California Edison. Number 2 is, it's gonna be an October to October year. If you have solar power, wind power, whatever you have at your home, and you charge more, you produce more electricity than you need, and it works out to more than $100, so they'll pay you a check. And if it's less than $100, they'll roll it over to the next year as a credit. I was wondering if there's any way we could partner with them, or as a district, purchasing power to be an electric company, or what? How is it that maybe the ratepayers in our area would have the ability to access that type of situation, which I think is much better than Southern California Edison offers.
Council, who is also counsel for that city, could probably advise us.
I would be happy to brief the board on the Lancaster Choice Energy approval that occurred last night. It's a pretty exciting thing for the city of Lancaster, and I'm intimately familiar with it. So it's not on the agenda for tonight, but I'd be happy to give you that update, and I will look into, I'll bring that back for you to look into whether that's something the district can do.
Okay. So I have.
Any other requests? Move to item 11, adjournment. Entertain a motion for adjournment. Second?
That's
Been moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.